everyone, Tony Gatliff here with another awesome episode of Military Resource Radio. And we have here today an amazing guest. Her name is Denise Van Koevering. She is the chief of the Blind Rehab Center at the Hines VA Medical Center in Hines, Illinois. But she was born and raised in Michigan. And her and I actually share a school, Western Michigan University. Go Broncos! So actually, it's going to be a great talk here with Denise today, and actually a great talk with her as well next week. So what I'd love for you to do is get on your favorite podcast outlet and subscribe to our show in podcast form. Or head on over to militaryresourceradio.com every week and click our podcast tab, and you can hear not only today's interview, but you can hear the interview with Denise next week. So anyway, without further ado, because we've got a lot of interviews to cover here with her the next 2 weeks, I'm going to stop going on and on like I normally do, and I'm going to go ahead and get us right into this interview with Denise Van Koevering. Here it is right now. Hey, Denise, how are you?
Hi, Tony. How are you? Good, thanks.
Well, thanks so much for being on Military Resource Radio today. And folks, again, we are talking to Denise Van Koevering. She is the chief of the Blind Rehab Center at Edward Hines Jr. VA Hospital, and that is in Hines, Illinois. Correct, Denise?
That is correct.
Okay, and for more information, you can head to hines.va.gov. And also, you can contact them by phone at 708-202-2272. That's the main number. So go ahead and give a contact after you hear all the great things that they're doing at the Edward Hines Jr. VA Hospital, especially in the Blind Rehab Center, which Denise is here to talk about. And folks, we got to Denise through a previous Military Resource Radio guest. I'm sure you folks remember A.J. Mohammed, a Navy veteran who was on here that has several health problems from his time in the service, but one of the main ones is he is legally blind. And he just, Denise, just to let you know, AJ could not say enough about the treatment that he received at the Blind Rehab Center there, and you folks and everything you're doing down there. So we were very excited to have you on.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, good. And so, Denise, as we always like to do here on Military Resource Radio, before we talk about the great things that you're doing in terms of your career now, we always like to start at the beginning, which, basically from the day you were born through today. And we try to get a biography of all our guests of sorts. And so you, like me, were born in Michigan. Where are you from in Michigan originally?
Well, I was actually born in Big Rapids, but I'm right, my hometown is Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Oh, okay. So you're born in Big Rapids, home of the Ferris State Bulldogs, correct?
You got it.
And and you can tell I'm a lifelong Michigander. I've been in Detroit my whole life, and so, but your hometown is Grand Rapids, okay? And a beautiful, beautiful area over on the west side of the state. And folks, if you haven't been to Grand Rapids, Grand Haven, Spring Lake, Saugatuck over on the west side of Michigan, it's beautiful over there. Denise, so you attended college and graduate school in Michigan as well. Where did you go to school?
So for my undergraduate degree, I went to Grand Valley State University.
Okay.
And graduated there with a chemistry major and a biology minor. Couldn't get a job when I got out of school, and my dad for many years had been telling me I should go into the field of blind rehab. But of course, as a 18, 19, 20-year-old, you don't listen to your parents, and wasn't going to do that, and then realized I couldn't get a job, or as my dad said, I graduated without a sellable skill, and decided to listen to him. And then went on to get my master's in blind rehabilitation at Western Michigan.
Oh, a fellow Bronco. Okay.
You got it.
Good. Yeah, I'm a Bronco myself. So
okay.
So fight on for Western. It's actually and the Grand Valley State Lakers as well. I mean, you've had quite a Michigan experience. So, couple things that I wanted to note. You ran track at Grand Valley State as well, correct?
That is correct.
What events, if you don't mind me asking?
So I was a sprinter, and I hurdled, and I did high jump and some triple jump. Triple jump was new back then. Those are my main events.
A jack of all trades of sorts.
Master of none.
Yeah. Well. Next thing you're going to be telling me you threw shot put, javelin, discus, all those different things.
No, can't do that.
Yeah, very different. Very different. Actually, the CEO of BBMC Mortgage, I'm giving him a little shout out here, Jeff Generelli. Shout out to Jeff Generelli, the CEO of BBMC Mortgage. As everyone knows, Military Resource Radio is on the BBMC Mortgage Radio Network. He actually was I want to say a top state contender in shot put in high school in the state of Illinois. So shout out to Jeff. I had to mention that because I mentioned the shot put. But so you got your master's at Western, and like I say, I mean, I'm a fellow Bronco. Kalamazoo is very, very near and dear to my heart. So you decided to go into blind rehab because you finally got to the age where you wanted to actually listen to your parents, and that shows some maturity.
That's the real reason, yeah.
Yep. And so actually my fiance, I think, who folks that listen to the show may remember, the lovely Ashley. She's out there. She is a speech language pathologist. So she has her master's in speech language pathology, and I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, I think at Michigan State where she went, blind rehabilitation was in the same buildings or alongside of that program too. So I didn't know if it was the same at Western or not.
They're close. I mean, the buildings have changed around a little bit, but they're pretty close because a lot of blind rehab and speech pathology do, at least at our hospital, do a lot of co-treating. Mm-hmm. So we're very familiar with the speech path people.
Yep, and it's I can totally understand what you're saying about the buildings moving around at Western. I went back up there a couple years ago to learn that the dorm that I was in when I was there has been torn down. So, apparently it was just time. But that's when you know you're old, is when you went to school in buildings that don't exist anymore, right? So
yeah, it's sad.
it is. Everybody, we all got to do it. Father Time gets us all, right? But So you entered grad school. You got your master's in blind rehabilitation and orientation and mobility, but you had originally graduated with a chemistry and biology major. Now, normally, if someone's a chemistry and biology major, that means that they're thinking about going pre-med. But it doesn't sound like, when your dad said it's not a saleable skill, I look at that and I think that's somebody that's maybe going to medical school. Was that maybe the original plan and then just didn't really want to, or just was that not the plan?
Well, it was kind of in the back of the head, but I thought, I'm going to be a nurse. That's kind of where I settled.
Gotcha.
And then when it was time to do clinicals or get close to that, I was like, I'm not sure this is where I should be. And then my counselor was on sabbatical, so I thought, well, I can go into teaching. So I was going to get my my teaching degree. And then, of course, he was gone. I didn't have some good follow-through, and I was down like 2 or 3 classes, and I thought, I just have to graduate. I can always take those classes later.
Sure.
I just have to graduate. So I just graduated and thought, well, maybe I could get a job in pharmaceutical sales or a lab.
Sure.
Something like that. And, it was a time when they weren't hiring really anything in that area. And so I couldn't get a job.
Wow, yeah, and I saw that your dad obviously had a reason that was more than a shot in the dark. in terms of, why he wanted you to be a blind rehab specialist, and that's because he was a blind rehab specialist, and he actually worked for a brief time at Hines VA Hospital, where you're working now. Hey folks, Tony Gatliff, host of Military Resource Radio here, and a question I get all the time about Military Resource Radio is, Tony, where can I listen to Military Resource Radio? Well, we are on several different online outlets that you can get on your favorite device. We are on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Google Play, Player FM, iHeartRadio, and TuneIn, which is already pre-programmed into your Amazon Echo device. All you need to do is go up to that Echo device and say, Alexa, play Military Resource Radio podcast. Boom, instantly, the most recent episode of Military Resource Radio will start playing on your Amazon Echo device. Whether that's a spot, a show, the regular Echo, whatever it is, you can get Military Resource Radio anytime, any place through Amazon on that. And as well, again, folks, those online outlets where you can download, subscribe to, and rate Military Resource Radio 5 stars are as follows: iTunes, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Google Play, Player FM, iHeartRadio, and TuneIn. And folks, another place that you can grab Military Resource Radio digitally is through our website at militaryresourceradio.com. Not only can you get all available episodes of the show, a preview of our next show, and as well as some other features, this is where all the latest and greatest information about Military Resource Radio is given out. You can take a look at our podcast tab where you can see each and every previous episode of the show right there and available for play right at militaryresourceradio.com. You can click the About Us tab, take a look at a little bit more information about me, Tony Gatliff, your host of Military Resource Radio, and about the show itself. You can contact us through our online contact form, or you can simply call us at 888-366, the number 4 and the letters MRR. That's Mike Romeo Romeo. Numerically, that's 888-366-4677. You can contact us either via email or via phone. As well, you can take a look again at militaryresourceradio.com. That's our home base for all the latest and greatest information. You can check out where to listen to us, the links for the aforementioned iTunes, SoundCloud, Spreaker, TuneIn, Player FM, Google Play, iHeartRadio. They're all right there on our website, so you can go to whichever outlet you like the best, download right into your device, and subscribe to our podcast and rate it 5 stars. Folks, you have no idea how much that helps here with Military Resource Radio. So, again, I'm Tony Gatliff, your host of Military Resource Radio. Please don't hesitate to head on over to militaryresourceradio.com and contact us through our contact form, or just take a look at some of the great information on the show. Or if you want to, give us a call. We do respond to all voicemails and messages left. Again, that number is 888-366, the number 4 and the letters MRR, or 888-366-4677 digitally. I'm Tony Gatliff, your host with Military Resource Radio. Now, back to more Military Resource Radio. And I saw that your dad obviously had a reason that was more than a shot in the dark. He was a blind rehab specialist, and he actually worked at Hines VA Hospital, where you're working now.
That's true, yeah. I grew up with it. And he actually worked a little bit at Hines and then got a job in Michigan. So I kind of grew up with all of that, and that is kind of when I thought, yeah, I don't want any part of this. And then, you mature, as you said, and decided, this maybe isn't so bad.
Sure. Yeah, it's. I mean, what an admirable thing that you're doing. I see that you've been previously you were an orientation and mobility specialist for 17 years. Can you tell me a little bit what an orientation and mobility specialist does?
Sure. So if you see anybody walking around with the white cane, the long cane, orientation and mobility specialist, that's their job. They teach safe, independent travel in all environments. So in Chicago, where obviously Hines is, we would teach them indoors and residential, and then we'd go into business districts where we would work on street crossings at traffic lights and traveling in, kind of smaller downtown areas, and then build them up with enough skills to have them take a bus from our hospital to the Chicago L. They would take the L downtown, and we would plan the route ahead of time. So depending on where they wanted to go, we would get off, travel a route, and then they would have to come back. And it was done pretty much independently. We were there for safety to make sure that was okay, but they would travel independently. So that's the goal. You just kind of start off simple and you keep moving to their abilities so that they can remain independent and travel by themselves.
Wow, and I see that, we're over here in Birmingham, Michigan, here at the Military Resource Radio studios, and there's a little downtowny, type of area here. I don't know if you've ever been to Birmingham, but it's a little downtowny area, and it's kind of full of people, but not too full. Okay, so what we see a lot is we see those training sessions going on. With the folks and their dogs, because it's I think it's sort of from what I've deduced from it, it's sort of an area where it's like it's kind of busy, but it's not New York City, right? And so I think it's a good maybe a good training ground for that. But we see that happening here all the time, right outside the Military Resource Radio studios here.
Yeah, and we take them to all different environments, but you don't want to take them, to, like you said, New York City right away. You got to kind of work it up and do downtown areas that aren't quite so busy.
Sure. So then you became a polytrauma TBI blind rehab outpatient specialist.
It's a mouthful, huh?
Yeah, that is a mouthful. Where you worked with those returning from Iraq and Afghanistan. Both in the main VA hospital at Hines and then in the Blind Center as well, and you did that for 8.5 years. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So the polytrauma, that means more than one injury. And TBI, obviously, with our military, they are protected so much more that we have noticed a lot of traumatic brain injuries.
Sure.
Some severe, some not so severe. And so we have a team, or the government actually has these facilities all over, and Hines has a team where we meet and we follow anybody that returned from Iraq or Afghanistan. And the team follows. We do a lot of co-treating with the other services. That was when I talked about speech pathology. But I dealt with all the vision issues. And so that's what I dealt with within the hospital. But at the Blind Center, I would deal like people like AJ. You mentioned earlier. So it's our young guys coming back, and they have vision problems, and I would work either with them, if they're veterans, or if they're still active duty, because we do take a lot of active duty. I'd have to work with their commanding officers and their case managers and get military orders, and so I was kind of like a case manager type thing, and then they would come in and I would help plan their program. So I do lots of talking to them beforehand, get their program plan, so when they came in they could really hit the ground running.
Well, that's great, and what admirable work you're doing over there. I mean, it's certainly, I can tell from what AJ says about you and from what your history is, you're very committed to veterans. Hey folks, Tony Gatliff here, host of Military Resource Radio. While we have a minute here, I wanted to mention our mission statement here on Military Resource Radio, and that is as follows. Here on Military Resource Radio, we connect veterans and active duty service members with amazing resources and organizations to improve their lives. We inspire veterans, active duty service members, and civilians alike to get involved with these amazing resources and organizations. We also enlighten veterans, active duty service members, and civilians alike on service-related resources and benefits like the real estate and mortgage market and process, as well as other current military news and events related to them. In addition, folks, we always like to, on Military Resource Radio, we like to send out a hearty thank you to all our veterans and active duty service members around the world and coast to coast. Thank you so much for what you've done. Thank you so much for what you continue to do. That's what makes America the land of the free and the home of the brave, and what keeps us doing Military Resource Radio every single week. So thank you so much to all our active duty service members and veterans coast to coast and around the world. We really appreciate it. Now, back to more Military Resource Radio. You know, I actually had a very good friend of mine a few years back now, a couple of years back anyway, that had a severe traumatic brain injury. He got in a car accident, unfortunately, and it was very, very life-changing for him. I would say that at the beginning of the process, he was probably, and look, I obviously am not trained to, give this assessment, but I'm just giving, my assessment of what I saw. And he was probably about 50% of what he previously was, cognitively and all that type of stuff. And through a lot of rehabilitation and a lot of work on his end and the great people that are working with him at RIM here in Detroit, and I'll get what that stands for. It's RIM, like a basketball rim, but I forget what the exact Rehabilitation Institute of Michigan, which is downtown here in Detroit. He's actually probably back to, I would guess, 85, 90% of what he was previously. So, it's great to see that there is medical progress in that field nowadays.
Yeah, it's a hard field, but it's a great field, and it's great that we can offer lots of rehab for these people, because it's just not the war, like you said. It's car injuries, falls, sometimes with older people, and other sports injuries. The big thing for football right now is they're talking about all these brain injuries.
Yeah, it's. I mean, and obviously, veterans. You're in the military. You're in harm's way in one way or another, right? And so those things do happen. But I wonder what now that you brought up the controversy in the NFL with the concussions and finding CTE, and I guess the tough part about CTE is you can't really tell if someone has it until they've passed away.
Right.
And so that's sort of the tough part about it. But I heard some type of startling statistic the other day, and I cannot remember exactly what it was. So folks will please excuse me if I did not get it right, but I believe they've studied like over 100 brains of deceased NFL players now at that CTE institute that they have over. I think it's at Tufts in Massachusetts, if I'm not mistaken. And I believe it was like over 95% of them have CTE. And when you look at something like that, it's just unbelievable. I just wondered what your thoughts are on that, or if you've studied that at all.
I haven't studied a lot of that particular thing. It intrigues me, but I probably study more of like the symptoms that we can notice ahead of time, because that's what we have to treat.
Right.
So, it's great to learn this. It's great to have all this research, but that doesn't necessarily help me right now.
Sure, right.
So,
right.
it will once it's developed
one
more.
day, sure, yeah.
Right, but, right now, we're taking a look at the symptoms and trying to come up with treatment plans with what we see right now. And how can we address them? How can we make it a more productive life and better their quality of life?
Absolutely. And now when your dad was, pushing you to get into this field, why was he doing it? Was he doing it from a standpoint of, this is a good thing that you can make a good living off of, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Or was he more the type of person that was saying, this is a great thing because you can help people on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I I think all of the above. I mean,
Sure.
every dream for a parent is to get your kid out of their house and,
Of course.
and where they can support themselves.
Sure.
So I think that's always was always in the back of his mind. And however, he loved the field, and he just kind of said, when he was doing this, you have the personality, you have the qualities that I feel would make a good person to do this job.
What were those qualities?
He probably because I talk a lot, and I can talk. I talk to him. I don't know. He didn't always say. He says you like to help people because I wanted to be a nurse.
Sure.
And he said, you like to help people. You like to kind of problem solve.
Sure.
And hence my chemistry. And you want to come up with ways. And he thought putting that together. And he did think I was caring, even though he told me many times I was bossy. But so probably all those characteristics did something.
Yeah. You need that. You're telling me you did well in chemistry. Right now, top of your head, Avogadro's number. Go.
I couldn't tell you. I haven't used it for a long time. I could ask my son. He just graduated with a chemistry major. Maybe he would know it, but
he
I
would
have
know
not
it.
used it.
He would know it. I guarantee. You probably use a lot less stoichiometry in these days than your chemistry professors probably let on. But 6.02, and there's several decimals past it, times 10 to the 23rd.
10 to the 23rd.
Yep.
Now I know it.
You remember it now. You remember it now.
Yep, I do. But when you don't use it for so many years, and
oh God, yeah, no, it's
I don't need it.
well, it's funny. I was in a chemistry class in high school. You'll appreciate this being a chemistry person, and so the first 3-4 weeks of the course, we're going over stoichiometry and kind of the basics of all that. And this teacher that I had, Miss Eichard was her name in high school. Now her name's Mrs. Bayerlein. She got married, but we're friends on Facebook still to this day. Shout out to Renee Bayerlein, my chemistry teacher from high school. But she, she's going through all this stuff. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, I'm going to fail this class. This is going to be the first class I ever failed in high school. There's no way I'm going to be able to remember all of this. And then, after scaring us to death, right, about 6 weeks in, we're coming up on the first test or whatever. And she said, I forgot to mention, for every test here, you can bring an index card front and back. And you can write whatever you want on it. And I'm like, oh my God, thank God. I thought.
And you learned to write really small, didn't you?
And
fit a lot on those cards.
Small, you wouldn't even believe how small it was. And it's funny, now that you mention that, it just made me think of something. I remember that I forgot my card for the last test of the year, and I had forgotten my card, and I remember saying, oh my God, Miss Eichard, can I come after school and take the test? I'll go. I can go home. I can get my card. I know right where it is. It's in my bedroom. I just forgot to bring it to school today. I can go home and I can come and take the test after class. And she would not let me. She said, no, I'm sorry. That's not fair to everybody else who brought their cards. And she goes, but I'll tell you this, Mr. Gatliff. She called me Mr. Gatliff. She said,
knew you were in trouble then.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, I wasn't in trouble actually. But she goes, I'll tell you this, Mr. Gatliff. Just by you writing that, you have learned all that, and you're going to be fine on the test. And wouldn't you know it, I aced the test. She was right. It wasn't as much about having the card in front of you. It was about you going through and organizing information and making sure it was on that card. The card was just a security blanket, I think, at the end of the day.
It was a huge security blanket.
Oh my God, it was huge. I was freaking out. I was like, I'm going to fail this. This is so horrible, whatever. But so anyway, after 8.5 years in that position, you became chief of the Blind Rehab Center in 2014, and that's the position you currently hold. Now,
That's correct.
Can you tell me a little bit about where the Blind Rehab Center and maybe even just the Hines VA Hospital in general, can you tell me a little bit about the development of your program and sort of where you were and where you are now?
Definitely. So our program actually first started on July 4th in 1948. And the VA celebrated the establishment of Blind Rehab and the placement of the first Blind Rehab Center, which was at Hines VA Hospital. So we were the first one. At that time, it was a very humble beginning, and we had a 9-bed facility and 9 staff members.
1 staff member per bed. I bet you'd die for that ratio today.
Oh, wouldn't that be awesome? But yeah, we started with 9, which is pretty hard to fathom nowadays. And our first chief was a World War II blinded veteran himself, and he is the one that started our program and really pushed for training for blinded veterans.
Wow. And so quick segue before you go into the next part. How do most veterans that you see today, how are most of them losing their sight? I know it's a variety of different ways, but what are like maybe the top 3 things that you're seeing as in terms of why this is happening and how this is happening to our veterans?
So, and actually, for statistics, we do a newsletter for each year. So in 2017, basically the top 5 were from eye diseases. We have macular degeneration and glaucoma and diabetic retinopathy and retinitis pigmentosa. And then the next big one is trauma, which would be like our OEF, OAF, or people that come in or injuries related to accidents, and then stroke. Stroke is coming up quite a bit.
Wow, that's interesting. And so obviously, and just so folks are clear on this out there, you can get help at the Hines VA Hospital Blind Rehabilitation Center if it's not a service-related, loss of vision as well. As long as you're a veteran, even if it's not service-related, you can get care at this center, correct?
That's correct. Really, you need 2 things to get any care at the Blind Center and at the hospital. You need to have a vision loss, and sometimes that is total blindness. Sometimes it's usable vision. Sometimes it's a functional vision. We've talked a little bit about a traumatic brain injury. Sometimes the brain and the eyes are not working properly. And so there's more of a functional issue. And then they have to be either active duty, which we still see, or they have to be honorably discharged from the military.
Sure.
That's all they need to come to our program.
Well, that's great. So anyway, I'm sorry I interrupted you. We were at 1948 so far.
I know. Well, yeah, we had a lot of ground to cover.
A lot of ground to cover.
So anyways, the program started and it was really obviously small with 9 beds. And but 1951. Well, let me back up. So back in 1948, there was Richard Hoover, who worked at Hines, and he actually came up with the idea and the development of the long white cane. And he's actually known as the father of the lightweight cane technique. So how to use the cane he came up with the idea, developed it at Valley Forge, and then instituted it, and then reformed it and expanded and all that stuff at Hines Blind Center.
Hey folks, Tony Gatliff, host of Military Resource Radio here, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I've got a couple things I've got to go over. The first thing is Military Resource Radio is on the BBMC Mortgage Radio Network, and it is sponsored by BBMC Mortgage. BBMC Mortgage is a full-service lender in all 50 states doing residential purchase and residential refinance loans. Any of your residential mortgage needs can be taken care of by BBMC Mortgage. And if you do have any needs, you need to dial us up at 888-366-4 and the letters MRR. That's 888-366-4 Mike Romeo Romeo. Or numerically 888-366-4677. We will put you in touch with the right expert at BBMC Mortgage to handle your situation. You'll be so glad that you got your mortgage through BBMC Mortgage because they are a tremendous sponsor of this show. And guess what? Me, Tony Gatliff, I'm a Vice President of Mortgage Lending at BBMC Mortgage too, in addition to being the host of this show. So we'll put you in touch with the right person here at BBMC Mortgage. If you do have any mortgage needs, please give us a call, 888-366, the number 4, and the letters MRR. As well, if you do choose to do business with BBMC Mortgage, you're doing well and you're doing good at the same time. And that's because of our Patriots Charity Initiative. This is an amazing program, folks. What it does is BBMC Mortgage on each and every funded loans proceeds, whether that's a VA loan, FHA loan, conventional loan, non-conforming or jumbo loan, any mortgage that we do, whether it's a purchase or refinance, we give $125 of that funded loans proceeds, which adds up to about over $2.5 million since 2015 when we started this. We give $125 of that funded loans proceeds to one of 4 veteran-related service organizations. Now, it's BBMC's $125, but you, the client, get to pick where it goes. And the 4 veteran service organizations that we work with right now on the Patriots Charity Initiative are the USO, the Mission Continues, the Headstrong Project, and Team Rubicon, all amazing organizations. You can find out more about our Patriots Charity Initiative by heading on over to militaryresourceradio.com. Again, that's militaryresourceradio.com for all the latest and greatest information on the show. But you have to scroll down on the homepage down to our Patriots Charity Initiative section, and that'll give you a better idea of what we do and what these service organizations out there do. They're all 4 of them are amazing organizations that are doing great things for veterans and active duty service members out there, so I'm sure you're going to want to check that out. One last thing. I want you to follow us on Twitter at MilitaryRR. That's at military, just the word military, Romeo, at MilitaryRR. That's our Twitter handle for Military Resource Radio. We're just getting that up and running, so please jump onto Twitter and follow us at MilitaryRR. Now, back to more Military Resource Radio.
Back in 1948, there was Richard Hoover who worked at Hines, and he actually came up with the idea and the development of the long white cane. And he's actually known as the father of the lightweight cane technique.
This is the guy that invented the technique of that you still see used to this day.
That is true, yeah,
Wow.
and brought it to Hines, which is, very exciting. Obviously, we were the first blind center, but we were the first to implement and refine this technique.
Wow.
Then in 1951, we can jump a few years ahead,
Sure.
We increased the beds from 9 to 27.
Wow, there you go, triple
Right,
growth.
we're getting up there. And
Yep.
we also did have some beds on in the hospital on the ophthalmology floor, because at that point we were seeing a lot of injuries from the war. So we would have some beds over there. And then I believe it was like 2005, we went up to our 34-bed unit, and that is what we're at today.
Wow, okay, so you're at 34 beds now in the actual unit.
Yes.
Wow. And so obviously, in addition to the beds, I'm sure you're serving, many other veterans that aren't actually, staying there as well, correct?
That's correct. We have our inpatient program, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but we have that. But we also have outpatient services. So we have blind rehab outpatient specialists that will go to people's homes. We have VIS coordinators all over the United States, and they are people that follow up and follow through with any veteran that has a vision loss. So they're at various hospitals, and these patients are referred to them. So they do a lot of case management and getting them into the inpatient blind rehab, but they also will get them some outpatient services also. It kind of depends on the person and what they need.
Doctors that make house calls. In today's day and age, that's something that you don't usually see.
No, and our blind rehab specialists, we just know that some people can't come into an inpatient program, maybe for health reasons, maybe for family reasons. You don't know. We have a lot of people that will take care of their kids now, or spouses that have to take care of their other spouse. And so our blind rehab specialists go to their house, and they spend time working on training in the house. Sometimes we even have people where they've gone through our inpatient program, and maybe they just need a little bit of tweaking once they get home. So we'll then send an outpatient specialist to their home to maybe cover a certain street crossing, or maybe to assist with a computer problem or something like that.
Right. So, yeah, and actually AJ was telling me about something that he was doing, I think, with that involved him sort of relearning how to type with, I think it was an iPad, if I'm not mistaken. He said it's really helped him a lot. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. In one of our skill areas, we teach them how to type if they don't know how to type, or maybe we have to review typing. And so we have regular keyboards that are attached to computers, and we put them on them, and we have the basic typing lessons that people used to have to take in high school, and we will put them through a full typing program. If they already know how to type, but they need to brush up a little bit, we do that also. With AJ, he had a Bluetooth keyboard, so that would be Bluetooth to his device, and he would just type on that, because it's a lot easier to type on the keyboard than to use the iPhone or the iPad keyboard in the actual device, because they can't see that. So it's much easier to do the touch typing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, wow, that's obviously in today's day and age, with everything being done email and text and all that stuff nowadays, that's just what an invaluable skill that you're helping those folks with, to help them get along in the world a little bit easier. I mean, that's a huge thing.
Technology seems to be everything. Whether good, bad, or indifferent, that's part of life. So, everyone that comes into our program, if they choose, they get some form of technology. Wow,
that's great. What a great program. And again, folks, we are talking to Denise Van Koevering, the chief of the Blind Rehab Center at the Hines VA Hospital in Hines, Illinois, and so we're talking about that. Again, information available at hines.va.gov on the internet, or you can call 708-202-2272 if you or a loved one is a veteran and having some issues with sight, or really anything else, at the specific hospital. But we're here talking about the Blind Rehab Center today. And folks, we have barely scratched the surface with Denise Van Koevering, chief of the Blind Rehab Center at the Hines VA Medical Center in Hines, Illinois. Very impressive facility, by the way, if you look it up online. Gets great ratings, and also just very modern, very cool looking facility. So they're taking care of a lot of veterans great over there. Denise is, we thank her so much for her time today, but she's also going to be on next week on Military Resource Radio. So please subscribe to us on your favorite podcast outlet, or head over to militaryresourceradio.com and click the podcast tab for all of our past episodes. And Denise's from today will be on there as well. And in addition, it'll be up, the next one will be up next week as well through your favorite podcast outlet, or available on militaryresourceradio.com. That's all for Military Resource Radio today. I'm Tony Gatliff, your host. Again, this has been another great episode of Military Resource Radio, and we look forward to having you join us next week for part 2 of Denise Van Kovering's exciting interview here. But like I said, it's going to be all for today on Military Resource Radio. We look forward to talking to you next week with more and another exciting episode with Denise Van Koevering. Talk to you soon.